Greetings and welcome to the channel. So today I want to have a little bit more of an in-depth chat about Tekken 8. I understand I have been very critical of the game, and it is not lost on me that there are many people that they they like the game. There are people I know that are content creators that shill for this game hard. Like they shill very hard for this game. And and I'm not saying any names. I'm pretty sure people have their suspicions, but I try to tell it like it is. And I try to be as forthcoming as I can. The way I have always looked at Tekken 8 for the longest is this is a game that was created by Harada's team. Even though I'm well aware that Nakatsu is the game director this time around, this game had a very has a very clear mandate, and I've said this several times, and I will repeat it again for any of you new people. And again, with that, if you are new, please consider joining and subscribing to the channel. If by the end of this video, I may or may not earn your subscription. Hopefully, I will earn it. But anyway, let me get back to my point. So, this game has a very clear mandate, and the mandate is remove just about every gameplay barrier, almost every bit of legacy skill, or basically look at it as get rid of any potential barrier that may stand in the way of a newer Tekken player that's either discovering the franchise for the first time with Tekken 8 or Tekken 7 was probably their first game. So this was planned by Namco. You know, the way the game is, the way that in my view and in many people's view and throughout the community, the game is scrubby. The game is very easy. The game is it's very scrub friendly. And it was designed this way. You know, anybody that has been playing the franchise for any number of time, like myself, I've been playing for 30 years since the very first game back in 94. I was 14 years old and I'm 44 currently. You know, I have seen the small, subtle shifts of the gameplay. I have seen when they decided to go more into the rage aspect with Tekken 5. You know, this was a mechanic that I just didn't really like, but it wasn't something that was like overt. It wasn't something that was like, oh my God, look at the sound the alarm, and then in Tekken 6, it got a little bit more extensive with I think it was the blue, no, Tekken 7 was like the blue spark moves, if I'm not mistaken. Believe me, I've seen so much. I kind of lose track of what's what at times, but definitely within Tekken 7, you had the blue spark moves. And then now, if you look at the gameplay mechanics, which I'm going to touch on for Tekken 8, you have your heat system, the rage arts, which are basically carried over from the prior game. So I want to touch on those mechanics. I want to touch on the armor moves. I want to touch on rage arts, and just the fundamental principles of character balancing versus the gameplay mechanics, because I don't think people look at it in this way. So every game, just about, I don't want to speak in absolutes, but most games has a certain parameter, certain framework. Especially fighting games, right? You have, like, say, Marvel vs. Capcom. They have the assist, right? They have super jumps. They have push blocks, right? They have mechanics that's universal to every character. That is the gameplay mechanics. If you look at Street Fighter 6, you have the drive gauge, that Street Fighter 6 is 100% revolves around that element, that gameplay mechanic. When you look at Tekken 8, however, or at least when I look at it, I see a mechanic that is just, it just feels like it's tacked on. Like, for instance, you can't really play Street Fighter 6 without engaging with the drive gauge. It like with Tekken 8, it's like you don't really need to use heat. You don't need to use rage arts. You don't need to use rage drives. These are mechanics and I guess you could say moves that were added for Tekken 8 for the sole purpose of accessibility, ensuring that the losing player can basically have a win button and come back against the person that has been earning their win or earned their round. And while there are some people I have seen in my comment section that will say, "Oh, well, this is all for hype. This is, it's exciting." It's bullshit. That's what it is. It's bullshit. If that is the only way that you can draw hype in your game is by giving the losing player a win button to steal a round, I'm sorry, then I guess you're not from the era that I'm from, where we actually made comebacks off of our own skill. That's how we made comebacks. That's how the very beginning of the FGC made their comebacks. You had to earn your shit. In Tekken 8, it's like all you need to do is just get your ass beat, and now all of a sudden, like think about this. How is it that you as a player are more of a threat to your opponent when you are at death's door than you were when it said round one fight? Does anybody? I don't know if anybody really grasps that. So let me say that again. How is it that in Tekken 8, a player can be more of a threat when they have basically gotten their ass beat, they're losing, but because they're in rage, now they're more of a threat than when both players were at 100% health and it said round one fight? But again, this comes back to the design decision to make Tekken 8 a scrub-friendly game. A game designed, and I want to emphasize that word, designed to help the losing player. This isn't like we're going to give the losing player the tools they need to survive, in practice mode, where you do get good, you learn matchups, you hone your craft, you try out new theories, you understand and learn your frame data. You do this in the lab. This is what we call it, but the casuals will call it practice mode. But no, that's still not good enough. We're just going to give the losing player a win button. If it's blocked, doesn't matter. There's still plus $1 million on block anyway, and then you get a free coin flip. It's just, it's frustrating, but it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt what I'm saying is 100% true, that this game is designed to be a specific way. And it is that way to draw in more people, to draw in more eyeballs, to make people feel like they're better at the game than what they really are. And then when you couple that, or should I say juxtapose that with a lot of these bullshit carry characters like King, Yoshimitsu, the Williams sisters, there's a lot of characters in this game that are absolutely busted and broken. And then you have a few other characters where they're not completely bullshit, but they have a move or two that really needs to be looked at hard and really toned down. And I've seen much of the community of Tekken where most, I would say, are calling for more nerfs across the board than buffs to characters. because I feel like, if you continue to buff and buff and buff, I feel like it would be much easier to just simply tone certain characters down, and eventually things will level out. The fact of the matter is this: when it comes to character balancing, and I don't care what fighting game it is, hell, we can even talk about first-person shooters. Balancing in anything competitive with a video game is very difficult. Certain companies are better at it than others. I don't believe this time around Tekken 8, their team, I feel like they got their next door neighbors to play test and to balance this game, in my opinion. But then again, it kind of does go back to what I said about design. Maybe not only the game mechanics were designed to be a specific way, but also the characters themselves, because you're going to have characters that may be better than one character. It's bound to happen. But it's another thing when you have a character or two or three or four that are just head and shoulders above everybody. Like that like it's highly egregious how bullshit they are. And you have quite a few characters in Tekken 8 that are like that. And I feel like they're just allowed to persist. We have seen this in Season 1 with Jin, Season 1 Dragunov, Season 1 Yoshimitsu, and so on. And it took over a year for Namco to finally address the Jin character. And in my opinion, I feel he's still bullshit, but just not as broken as he was in Season 1. And again, this is going to be a common theme in this video, depending on how long you stick with me. It is by design. And when I look at armor attacks, right? Armor attacks, if you recall in Tekken 7, not many people were using armor moves. At least I haven't. And I was competitive in Tekken 7, well, at least in the first year or two. Not many people were using armor attacks. I know I wasn't with Lei, forward 2. Forward 2 with Lei. That was one of his armor attacks. I rarely use that move. I rarely seen people use armor attacks. And when I really looked hard into how Tekken 8 armor attacks work, and I don't know if many of you know or realize the differences. So let me just create a little bit of an example, like a visual example for you. In Tekken 7, let's say if we have Lei versus Feng Wei, right? We know both those characters, right? So if Lei does an attack against Feng Wei makes the read, Feng Wei does an armor attack. However, the attack that Lei did is like just a 10 frame jab or a 12 frame attack, and Lei is able to recover in time and block. So while Feng Wei's armor attack will go through Lei's 12 frame attack, he'll tank the move. Feng Wei will take the damage. However, Lei will end up blocking. So what ends up happening is now Feng Wei has a net negative of health for attempting an armor attack that was not successful. Now, if we look at the same scenario, if this was Tekken 8, because I know my character Lei is not in Tekken 8, but let's just keep this example simple. In Tekken 8, the exact same situation, Feng Wei would tank the 12 frame attack from Lei. However, the damage would no longer be permanent. It would be recoverable damage. And then also, even though Lei will recover in time because he only did a 12 frame attack, he'll recover in time to block Feng Wei's armor attack to make it somewhat, I guess, worthwhile to have used the Feng Wei armor attack. Not only did Feng Wei, he lost armor, recoverable health, Lei also loses recoverable health. However, the armor attack that Feng Wei did, which normally would be like, let's say, -12 or -13 for whatever reason, right? Now his armor attack is safe on block. So throughout that whole exchange in Tekken 8, hopefully it made sense because I know there was a lot going on, but if anything, just replay the part and listen to it. With all of that went on, it incentivizes the player doing the armor attack to where even if the person did the armor attack and the opponent manages to block it, it's not a loss for anybody. So that's where I realized armor attacks for Tekken 8 were designed specifically for you to use them. So it does tie in line with the theme of Tekken 8 of it being aggressive. And aggression does not necessarily only mean I'm the offensive player, I'm player A, and I'm just mashing my buttons and I'm just throwing a whole bunch of things at the camera while you, player B, are doing this. You're just defending. Where in Tekken 8, okay, with the way the armor attacks are, like I just explained, if player A is doing this to you, and now you're player B, you can just do an armor attack, and even if your armor attack is unsuccessful, one, your armor attack will now potentially take on it will now become safe if you manage to tank or go through an attack while using your armor, and you would not incur permanent damage the way you would if it was Tekken 7. So this is where when Tekken 8 in Season 1, if you recall, well, it wasn't that long ago, armor attacks also doubled as heat engagers. So if I tanked through your attack, it also draws an heat engager, which many people in the community bitched and complained and whatever, and it was removed. The heat engager aspect was removed, as well as the amount of plus frames. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, Namco had no intention on removing that. That was 1,000,000,000% what they wanted from day one for Tekken 8. That is what they wanted. They looked at if player A is going to be aggressive, the defending player, they were giving the tools of the revamped armor attack. And if you do armor through your opponent's aggression, you are also rewarded with a heat engager to allow you now to go on the offensive. So that's where the whole premise of the aggression comes from. It's not just, I'm just going to mash buttons and wear you down. Because people would say, well, what about defensively? Like, what are we supposed to do defensively? Now I see that Namco, for Tekken 8, they wanted your defense to really be an armor attack that also gave you heat. That is what the original design of the game was for. That's what the original design of the game was. But because now you have, and this is also the reason why sidesteps, I believe what people are complaining that sidesteps weren't that great, they weren't that useful. That's because the game was not designed for you to do a whole bunch of sidestepping. The game was designed for you to use your armor attack and tank through your opponent's assault. That's why, as an added reward to start your offense, you were also given a heat engager that was like what, plus 17, I think it was at the time. I think it was plus 14 or plus 17. So now you can start going on your shit, and then after your opponent now blocks a few moves, they can do an armor move back to you. That was the original design, the intent of Tekken 8, as I see it. But the way it is now, a lot of Tekken players, the vocal minority, which makes up the hardcore audience, they complained and complained and complained that, well, the advantage on heat, the heat engager was too strong. We couldn't do nothing. That was the point. That was the point. Maybe I should call this video the truth behind Tekken 8. Maybe I think that's what I'll call it. Because that was the intent. The intention was for, if you get hit with a heat engager and the opponent is running after you and you can't do nothing, that's the whole point of it was. That was the whole point. I see that now. That's why you can have a character like Victor that can do back 1+2 and do that little stupid high knife attack. And if he catches, I'm just using him as an example. I know other characters can do it, of course, but using Victor as the example, he would do his little knife strike. It's a high. It was safe, but again, with it being high, you could duck. So that was kind of like the counterplay. In addition, you can attack them low and you can grab them out to snuff them out of the armor. So there you had the little counterplay, if you will. But that is how I see Tekken 8 was really designed to play. In terms of its design intention, it was designed to bring in new players, low-level scrubs or beginner-level players to help increase its casual audience, thus gaining more and more money to help fund Tekken 9. So I'm giving you the reason why Tekken 8 was designed the way it was, and I'm also giving you the reasons behind why the game played the way it did. Now, with sidesteps being a little bit buffed, right? I think in one of the patches, heat engagers being all removed from armor attacks, now that kind of fundamentally changed how Tekken 8 was originally designed to be played as. Now, back when I played this game at launch, I didn't think of this, but I'd say it was short, maybe about a month or two into season 2, I started to really think and realize, like, you know something? I think these armor moves, the way they were changed, that is what Namco, Harada and Nakatsu's team, that is what their main defense was for you to just power through your opponent's mash and get a heat engager, and now you're on the offensive. That's the reason why, again, to reiterate the point, why when you're in a heat engage situation, back then, you were like minus a billion on block, because that's what was the intent. So, you know, I'm hoping what I'm saying is coming through clear. Please let me know in the comments section so that I could probably try to work on my breakdown maybe in a future video if people didn't understand. You know, I don't have a problem breaking it down a different way, but this is really how I see Tekken 8 as it was originally designed to play as. You know, so I just look at the game fundamentally. It has a lot of flaws, but I understand from a business standpoint why they went the direction they went, even though it did result in a lot of characters losing out on their identity, which is what the community usually says for a lot of characters. The loss of the identity, you know, basically whether it's moves being changed, certain frames being altered, new moves that are being more prioritized, like say Steve Fox. Steve Fox's was very alien to me early on because, you know, one of the best Steve Fox players in the United States, Shinblade, great guy, and also a great channel. You should check him out, Shinblade TV, I think it is. You know, he kind of got to grips on Tekken 8 Steve, I would say pretty early on. For me, you know, playing Steve since Tekken 4, I mean, I'm not as good as he is. I mean, he's a pro level Steve, but I'm very solid. Lei was always my character, but Steve, I'm very strong. But it took me a while to kind of get Eustace Tekken 8 Steve because I felt like he felt like Fenway. The whole Lionheart, the step back Lionheart over here, over here, over here. It just felt like Fenway's Kempo step, and it just felt like you're basically turning Steve into Fenway 2.0. And I don't know how many Steve players felt that way or maybe still feel that way, but that's how I felt. And it wasn't until not maybe a few months ago where I kind of just was like, you know what? I have an idea of what the general blueprint of the character is. This is why I tend to say oftentimes I don't need to main your character to understand how the character is designed to function. That's why I say that. That's why I can break down Lee Chaolan, even though I don't main the character. I can break down King. I can break down Nina. I can break down Brian. I can break down all these characters because I see the blueprint. I can care less who else is using the character because all they're doing is they're using what the character is programmed to have. You know, understand what I'm saying? So I look at what the character has on paper. That's what I look at the frames. I look at the moves. Dare I say, I look at the character in a vacuum. I know a lot of people tend to use that. I kind of roll my eyes when I see people comment that because I don't think they really understand what it is to really learn a character. Because when you're learning a character, you are learning the character in a vacuum. And then once you learn the character, then you go out and then you learn your matchups and you see how that character stacks up against another character. But anyway, I digress. So, you know, just looking at Tekken 8 as a whole, it has a lot of fundamental flaws. It does some things very well. I will say it did launch in I would say a largely complete phase. I do wish that they had like a Tekken Force mode because I really love that. But maybe, you know, that's something they can add later. You know, I think the net code is okay. You know, it's not horrible, but it's definitely a lot better than some of the other Tekkens I've played. And the game looks graphically amazing. This is where a lot of the budget went, well, including the actual storyline. It went to completely new assets, graphical assets, which is another reason why they're trying to recoup all of that money so that they can actually build the budget for Tekken 9. So this is why, also speaking about Tekken 9, I do believe whether right now or maybe in the next year, the majority of the Tekken team are going to really just be moving on to Tekken 9. Now, you're going to have, a segment or a portion of the team that's going to continue to do, the few updates and patches and bug fixes and release, or should I say, trickle release the DLC characters like the cancerous fucking character Marduk, because he's coming. That card is absolutely cancer. Probably Miguel. Definitely Bob, another cancer character. These characters are on their way 100%. I do feel Julia will make her return. So I think a large part of me does believe Lei will also make a return as well. But I just do hope, as I said in a prior video, I do hope they manage to secure the rights to use Jackie Chan, and better yet, have Jackie Chan really get into the character, but that remains to be seen. But yeah, you know what? I will say that Tekken 8 does some things good, but between the character balancing, I do believe there is much work needed there. Maybe to be specific, some characters need to be really toned down, and maybe certain moves of other characters need to be looked at, as I said earlier in the video. And to me, I would like to see a version of Tekken 8 where you are given the option, and I said this a while ago in a prior video, where you have the option to play Tekken Heat or Tekken Cold, where you can play a version of Tekken without heat engagers, without any of that bullshit. It's just straight up Tekken 8. you know, without all the extra bullshit. I think there is a mod on PC that allows that, I think, but you know, I'm not on PC, but I have heard of certain things, but I would like to see that because in my opinion, I think it would be good for them, Namco, to introduce an option like that because it would give them actionable data to determine just how many people really do like this heat mechanic nonsense. Because if they find out that the majority of the community doesn't like it, then they will know not to add the shit in Tekken 9. See, I'm thinking ahead. You know what I'm saying? And in fact, coincidentally, this is what I wish that Mortal Kombat 1 would have done with their cameo system. I wish they would have had a mode where, well, actually, Mortal Kombat 1 has its own issues. Real MK Tom Brady, who I feel should have been hired at NetherRealm, by the way. I mean, I'm going off on a small tangent here, but he really breaks it down as it is. You know, he has an amazing mind for fighting games, and I definitely agree that every character should have been buffed in Mortal Kombat 1 to where they could function on their own more or less without reliance on the cameo, and NetherRealm could have simply had a mode where you could play Mortal Kombat 1 like your standalone fighting game, right? Or you could do it, you know, with the cameos. I wish they would have gave that option. And it's the same option I'm basically referencing to when it comes to Tekken 8 Heat and Tekken 8 Cold. I came up with the term because, you know, you got the heat system, so I feel cold is literally the absence of heat from a scientific standpoint, in case anybody doesn't know. That's all it is. When you're cold, it's the absence of heat. That's really what it is. That's why you can't get below a certain temperature cold, but you can increase heat almost infinitely. You know what I'm saying? So that's a little nugget of information there for you guys. But anyway, man, you know, I can talk about Tekken a lot, even though I don't want this channel to be the Tekken channel, because there's still a lot of gaming news out there that I will love to cover. But I hope that this video made sense for some of you. I don't really expect my videos to really do well viewer wise, but in those moments where I gain 2,000, 5,000 views or whatever it is, I'm eternally grateful and very humbled. I hope one day, you know, I can be like some of these larger channels like Endymion or Dr. Disaster 1 or Young Yeah or Luke Stevens, or maybe even, you know, other channels out there that they can just post whatever gaming related and they get like a large viewing. But, you know, maybe we'll see. But anyway, I guess that's it for the video. Otherwise, I'm just going to go and rant. So the next video I want to do, I do want to do something on Feng Wei. There's a series of moves that Feng Wei has that even the amazing elite level player Joker, an elite level Tekken player, I don't know if he runs these particular moves, but I do feel Feng Wei, these particular moves when used together are exceptional, and I do want to put together that video. I did a recent live stream for almost 5 hours. I can't believe I yapped that long. And I was kind of talking about King and his bullshit, but it's in a live stream format. So I think I want to make a standalone video where I was just referencing the issues I have with King as a character and how I feel Namco can balance that character out finally. Like, I mean, really balance him out. But anyway, you know, I appreciate any of you that decided to listen for even right now. And I hope everybody is well. Thank you for tuning in. And to the new people that might have been finding me out for the first time, hopefully I earned your subscription. Anyway, till then, or should I say till next time, I'm out. Peace.